And one thing, and you've talked about this now for a while, and that's fixing the state's roads. And I'm not going to say gas tax, but that is certainly something that will be considered, I expect. I understand now that the Chamber of Commerce and the Alabama Business Council of Alabama both are in favor of maybe having a tax if that's what it takes to fix roads. Is in your mind, is that where we're headed, or do you still want to talk about the fact maybe we can find another way to do it? What do you think?
No, I think at the end of the day we have come to the point now to where we have got to address infrastructure package. But I would hope that people do not just focus on a gas tax. This thing is bigger than that. It's been over 25 years since we've addressed this issue, but there's things that we need to put in place in this bill that such things as grading our road system to where every road that is in the transportation improvement plan, has it been looked at from different criteria to make sure that it should be at the top of the list. How important it is to the state for economic growth. There's no doubt, Steve, when we went through the A-Trip funding initiative, and I was a member of that A-Trip committee, there's no doubt that if you fix roads and you fix infrastructure, you improve the economic development of your state. There's no doubt about that. I was watching, I was listening and educating myself on it, and there's no doubt. But when we look at that, we've got to make sure that the projects that we're putting up at the top of the list are worthy of that. We need to have the funding formula addressed. We're operating off a 40-plus year funding formula, and the demographics in our counties have changed. We've got rural areas versus city areas. We've got municipalities that encompass in a huge population of each county. We're going to look at that aspect. We've got hybrid and electric vehicles that we need to be addressing, because that market is growing and there's more vehicles on the road, and rubber tires running down the road, they wear on the highways just like a gas
It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what kind of vehicle.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so there's many issues, and there's a growth mechanism that we need to find out what would be the right formula to move us forward, so that 25 years from now, my children, my grandchildren, are not faced with the dilemma that we're faced with now. So there's a lot of things. So it's saying, more than just a gas tax.
Okay, and you're not saying, we're not talking about fixing roads next year. We're talking about a program to fix them for the next quarter of a century.
Long term. We one of the things that I'm pushing very hard for from the leadership in the House is that we quit working on problems and putting band-aids on these problems from one year to the next. Let's sit down and look at some things long term.
Okay, I like that idea, and of course, people hearing this will say, well, what about 565? We've got this new plant coming, and when is that going to happen? Do you feel good about that happening when it should happen? Will the money be there?
I think at the end of the day, when you look at the growth that we're going to experience up here, and you look at the gridlock that we have on 565 now, sure, I think it's going to be one of those major projects, and I think it will be that way for good cause. When you look at the criteria, I think it'll fit all the
Mazda
criteria.
Toyota coming to the area is huge.
Well, gosh, I mean, you put 10,000 new jobs out there with spin-off work and the factory itself. I mean, that's a huge amount of traffic you're going to put on that road.
Okay, and you've been very enthusiastic about figuring something out about the roads. Do you feel like the legislature will come around to actually doing it this coming session?
I think so. I think so. I think we are at a point. We've been working on this. As you know, I brought up the first bill ever on revenues for roads, and that was 3 years ago, and we've come a long way since that day, and I think people are beginning to realize the longer they sit in traffic, even trying to go from North Alabama to our Gulf Coast is becoming a problem.
665 is not much fun.
It's just almost gridlock sometimes. And people are beginning to see that. And when they respond to me and they tell me, they said, Speaker McCutcheon, you were right. What you said 3 years ago is actually happening. And I said, well, just hold on, because if we do nothing, it will only get worse. There'll be no opportunity for improvement.
Okay. All right.